The cold wind howled through the pines that winter night, carrying with it the sound of distant wolves and the mournful whisper of the mountains. Snow blanketed the valley like a shroud, and beneath it, life seemed frozen, except for the faint glow that flickered through the cracks of a small log cabin deep in the wilderness. Inside that humble shelter, a young native woman named Aiyana worked tirelessly, her hands trembling but steady as she pressed a cloth to the bloodied side of a wounded man lying on her bed. He was pale, unconscious, and clearly not from her people. His clothes, his rough beard, his boots all spoke of a white settler, perhaps a trapper or a frontiersman who had wandered too far from his settlement. She didn't know his name, nor did she know if he would survive the night. But when she found him half buried in snow near the riverbank, an arrow in his shoulder and frostbite creeping over his fingers, something in her heart refused to leave him there. She had seen death before, seen too much of it in this land where two worlds constantly clashed. But something about the man's face had stirred a strange feeling inside her, a quiet voice that said he deserved another chance. So she brought him home, wrapped him in furs, and nursed him with herbs her grandmother once used for healing. For days, the stranger drifted between life and death. He muttered in his sleep, names, prayers, and regrets. Aiyana learned little from his delirious words, but she stayed beside him, feeding him broth when he could swallow, changing his bandages when he moaned in pain. She even whispered songs of her tribe, the old healing chants, hoping the spirits would guide him back to life. Slowly, his fever broke. When he opened his eyes for the first time and saw her, confusion shadowed his face. Where am I?" he rasped. His voice was rough, dry as bark. "You are safe," she replied softly. "You are in my home. You were hurt. I helped you." He blinked, trying to sit up, but pain shot through his side and forced him back. "You saved me," she nodded, her expression calm. "Yes, I found you near the river. You would have died." The man studied her, the soft curve of her cheek, the long black braid over her shoulder, the calm strength in her dark eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "My name's Daniel. Daniel Cooper." "Aiyana," she said simply, pointing to herself. "My name." Days passed, and Daniel slowly regained his strength. He was a settler from the nearby frontier settlement, he told her, a man who had come west to build a new life after losing everything in the east. He had been ambushed by a small band of raiders while hunting. He escaped, but barely. Aiyana listened quietly, saying little, but she could see the truth in his weary eyes. He was a man running from ghosts of his own. The snowstorm raged for another week, trapping them together in that small cabin. Though words were few, they found comfort in the silence. Daniel helped her with chores once he was able, cutting firewood, repairing the roof, fetching water. Aiyana showed him where to find herbs, how to read the animal tracks outside. In the evenings, they shared simple meals, and sometimes she smiled when he tried to speak her language. There was something gentle about the way he looked at her, something that both warmed and frightened her. But peace, as Aiyana knew well, never lasted long in this land. One morning, as the storm cleared and sunlight broke over the white fields, the sound of horses shattered the quiet. Aiyana froze. Outside, a group of men rode toward the cabin, settlers from the nearby town. At their head was Sheriff McAllister, a man known for his rigid sense of law and judgment. Daniel's heart dropped as he recognized them. "Stay inside," he told Aiyana, grabbing his coat and stepping out into the snow. The men dismounted, rifles slung across their backs, eyes narrowing when they saw him emerge from a native woman's cabin. "Well, I'll be damned," the sheriff said. "Daniel Cooper, isn't it? We thought you'd frozen to death. And now we find you shacked up with an Indian girl." Daniel tried to explain. "She saved my life, Sheriff. I was wounded. She took me in, nursed me. That's all." But in that era, appearances were everything. The settlers' laws were harsh, especially when it came to a man and a woman alone under one roof, worse still if she was native. The men exchanged looks, muttering to one another. The sheriff's voice turned cold. "You know what they'll say in town, Cooper. A man found living with a squaw in her cabin, alone for days. You'll face disgrace. And he glanced at Aiyana with contempt. She'll be branded a harlot." Daniel's stomach tightened. He knew how gossip spread faster than wildfire in the frontier settlements. Aiyana stood in the doorway, her chin lifted proudly, though she didn't understand every word being said. "What are you implying, Sheriff?" Daniel asked. "I'm saying," the sheriff said, spitting into the snow, "you got two choices. Either you both face the town's judgment, or you make it right in the eyes of God and marry her." Aiyana frowned as she saw the look of shock on Daniel's face. She didn't know what the sheriff said, but she could sense the change in the air, the tension, the shame, the fear. Daniel turned toward her, his mind racing. Marriage, to her, they came from two different worlds. He had only just started a new life, and she deserved her freedom, not to be bound by a forced vow. But if he refused, she would suffer. The settlers would call her a temptress, a witch, or worse. They might drive her from her land, or kill her. Daniel took a long breath, his jaw set. "Fine," he said quietly. "If it keeps her safe, I'll do it." That afternoon, under the watchful eyes of the settlers and with a traveling preacher muttering the vows, Daniel and Aiyana were married in the clearing outside her cabin. She didn't fully understand what the ritual meant in his world, only that it would stop the men from hurting her. He slipped a simple ring, his mother's old silver band, onto her finger. When the preacher said the final words, the sheriff nodded, satisfied. As the men rode away, Aiyana stood silently, her breath clouding the cold air. "Why they come?" she asked. Daniel looked at her, guilt heavy in his chest. "They made us marry," he said. "To protect you." She looked down at her hand, then back at him. "You no want." He hesitated. "I didn't want it this way. But I'll keep my word." In the weeks that followed, Daniel stayed. He built a small addition to the cabin, helped repair the fences, hunted for food. Though their marriage had begun as an act of protection, something began to shift between them. Aiyana's quiet grace, her strength, her kindness, they filled the empty spaces in his heart. And for Aiyana, Daniel's gentleness and respect softened her fears. He never treated her like property or an outsider. He thanked her for every meal, listened when she spoke, and defended her when traitors passed through and made cruel remarks. One night, as spring melted the snow, Daniel sat by the fire, carving wood. Aiyana sat beside him, mending a torn shirt. The silence between them felt different now, warm, alive. "Do you regret it?" Daniel asked suddenly. "What happened that day?" She looked up, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "You live. I safe. No regret." He smiled faintly. "You deserve more than this. More than being forced into a life you didn't choose." Aiyana placed a hand over his. "I choose now," she said softly. "I stay." That night, the barrier between them finally broke. They didn't need words to understand what grew between them. It had been there all along, in the way he looked at her, in the way she risked everything to save him. Months passed, and their life settled into rhythm. Daniel built a small barn, planted a garden, and traded furs for supplies. Aiyana taught him the ways of the land, how to listen to the wind, how to find healing plants, how to thank the earth for its gifts. Together, they forged something rare in those wild days, a bond built on respect, not power, on love, not duty. But peace was fragile on the frontier. One summer evening, a group of armed settlers arrived again, this time accusing Aiyana's tribe of stealing horses. The sheriff led them, his eyes still full of that same prejudice. When they demanded Daniel hand over his Indian wife, he stood between them in the cabin, rifle in hand. "She's done nothing wrong," he said. "You'll go through me before you lay a hand on her." There was a tense silence. The sheriff sneered but backed down, muttering curses as they rode off. Aiyana watched from the doorway, tears glistening in her eyes. Later that night, as the stars burned bright overhead, she whispered, "You protect me. Like I protect you." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Always." Years later, travelers passing through the valley spoke of the strange couple who lived near the river, the settler and his native wife who built a home out of nothing. They said their love defied the laws of men and the boundaries of two worlds. When Daniel grew old, he often told their story to others who came seeking wisdom. "I went into those mountains a broken man," he would say, "and came out whole, because a woman the world said I should fear saved my life, and in saving me, she taught me how to live." And Aiyana, ever calm, would smile and whisper in her native tongue, "Two hearts, one fire." Their cabin stood for decades, a quiet testament to what love could conquer, prejudice, law, and the cruel expectations of a divided world. It was not an easy life, but it was a true one. And though history forgot their names, the wind that passed through the pines still carried their story, a story of mercy, of courage, and of two souls who found each other when the world tried to tear them apart.